She stood quietly at gate 32, ready to close a $5 billion deal. But instead, they accused her of stealing a boarding pass. What happened next shook Wall Street, rewrote airline policy, and proved one thing: never underestimate a woman with power and purpose. The air inside Gate 32 of the bustling Atlanta International Airport buzzed with the familiar tension of impatient travelers, flight delays, and overhead announcements echoing through polished steel and glass. Amidst the movement, Ariana Cole stood composed. A tall, sharply dressed black woman in her mid-40s, scrolling through her phone, her expression serene yet focused. She wasn't just another passenger. Ariana was the CEO of one of the top venture capital firms in the world, and her presence radiated quiet power. Clad in a tailored navy blazer, her only accessory was a cup of green tea and a tablet filled with back-to-back meetings. Her trip wasn't recreational. She was heading to New York to finalize a $5 billion investment deal in the very airline she was flying with. Yet, she moved with understated elegance. No assistance, no designer flash, just substance. To an outside observer, she might have looked like a well-organized executive, nothing more. That's how Ariana liked it. She believed her actions spoke louder than status. As the gate attendant announced boarding for Flight 679, she closed her tablet, adjusted her jacket, and stepped forward toward the gate. But then, just as her boarding pass was about to scan, she heard a voice, firm, official, and undeniably aimed at her. "Excuse me, ma'am," came the words, drawing not only her attention but the eyes of nearby passengers. A uniformed airport security officer stepped directly in front of her. Confused but calm, Ariana glanced up. The officer offered no explanation. Another staff member appeared beside him, equally grim. "We need to speak with you," they said. Ariana raised an eyebrow, unsure what warranted this sudden intervention. She had done nothing suspicious. Still, with practiced grace, she stepped aside as requested. The initial tension thickened when they asked for her ID again. Then came questions about her boarding pass. She showed them both, identical to what she had presented moments earlier. But instead of clarifying anything, they accused her of fraud, suggesting she was using someone else's ticket. A small crowd began to gather, hushed whispers rolling like a low tide. Ariana remained composed, even as her cheeks flushed with indignation. Cameras slowly began to emerge, passengers documenting the escalating situation. It became clear this was no routine check. "You need to come with us," one officer said coldly. Ariana, maintaining her poise, responded, "Why am I being singled out? I've done nothing wrong." The guard didn't flinch. "Ma'am, we're not going to argue. Either come quietly or we'll remove you by force." She looked around. Strangers were now filming her. Some appeared sympathetic. Most just stared. With no answers, no respect, and no rights being acknowledged, Ariana was escorted away from the gate. Her carry-on was taken. Her voice, though calm, went unheard. She was pulled from a flight not for who she was, but for what she looked like. And no one, at least not yet, recognized the full weight of their mistake. Until this moment, Ariana had faced sexism, racism, corporate gatekeeping, but rarely this blatantly. As she sat alone in a sterile terminal room, the humiliation sank in. A manager finally entered the room. His smile was thin, his suit wrinkled, his eyes darting to avoid hers. "It's just a precaution," he said, waving off her questions with indifference. "Standard protocol. We're just doing our job." Ariana narrowed her eyes. "Everyone's safety. For me?" she asked, voice low and cold. "Do I look like a threat?" He didn't answer. Instead, he mumbled about procedures, shrugged, and advised her to leave the terminal if she had a problem. When she demanded to speak to someone higher up, he smirked. "Ma'am, you're holding up traffic. If you don't leave, we'll call airport police." Ariana's tone sharpened. "I am the traffic." It wasn't a boast. It was a reminder of power, of presence, of principle. In the shadows of the terminal, someone else had been watching. A young intern from her company, traveling separately, had witnessed the whole thing. He stayed quiet but recorded every moment. He knew exactly who she was, and he also knew the world would soon find out. The weight of the scene began to shift. The optics were undeniable. A successful black woman was being publicly humiliated and falsely accused in front of dozens of witnesses, for nothing more than existing in a space someone thought she didn't belong in. And the institution behind it would soon pay for their ignorance. Ariana didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply walked out of the airport with the confidence of a woman who understood exactly what she was about to do next. Later that afternoon, seated in the back of a sleek black sedan with tinted windows, Ariana pressed her phone to her ear. Her voice was clear, measured, and unshakable. "Pull the offer," she said. "All $5 billion. Effective immediately." Her CFO's voice crackled with confusion. "Wait, what? But the board already—" "I don't care," she interrupted. "We don't fund institutions that humiliate people based on race or stereotype. I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing you." The call ended. By morning, Wall Street was ablaze. Headlines screamed about a withdrawn $5 billion investment. News channels scrambled for information. The airline stock plummeted 17% in hours. By mid-afternoon, the CEO of the airline was trending on every major social platform. Board members scrambled. PR teams panicked. The same airport manager who had treated Ariana like a criminal? He was terminated before the close of business. His dismissal letter was leaked, citing unprofessional conduct and racial profiling. But Ariana didn't gloat. She didn't tweet. Instead, she released a poised public statement. "Today's incident wasn't about me. I'll recover, I always do. But for every Ariana Cole, there are countless others who are silenced, dismissed, or profiled every day with no voice to speak up. I just happened to have a mic, and I used it." That was the moment everything changed. Just 2 days after the incident, a smaller, more agile airline reached out to Ariana's team. They weren't just looking for funding, they wanted transformation. Their pitch was clear: partnership, not just investment. They proposed diversity in leadership, anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff, inclusive passenger treatment protocols, and, most notably, a board seat for Ariana's foundation that focused on equity in transportation. Ariana didn't hesitate. She took the meeting. And in that room, seated across from people who understood not just the value of her money but the depth of her mission, she saw something that had been missing in the industry for years. Respect. Real, rooted respect. The result? A brand new $5 billion deal announced just 1 month later. This time with terms she personally wrote. Clauses requiring representation benchmarks, quarterly transparency reports, community reinvestment commitments, and training programs designed by people who had experienced what she did. The new airline became a media darling. Public support surged. Consumers voiced their loyalty. And airports across the nation began reevaluating their own internal policies, not just out of obligation, but out of fear. No one wanted to be the next headline. Ariana, once humiliated in silence, now led a movement that echoed louder than she ever planned. And the ripples were only beginning. The intern who recorded the incident, Ariana hired him personally. He hadn't posted the video for fame. He hadn't even planned to say anything. But he had seen injustice and he acted. When Ariana brought him into her office weeks later, she said something he would never forget. Anyone who sees wrong and does something about it deserves to be part of the solution. She gave him a position within her corporate social responsibility division, his first real job, and more importantly, a seat at the table where change was decided. Together, they helped roll out education programs for young professionals in marginalized communities, ensuring future generations had the tools, language, and confidence to never let what happened to her happen again. Ariana's approach wasn't vengeance. It was restoration. She never raised her voice. She never needed to. Instead, she let her legacy do the talking. Every headline, every press conference, every article that followed used one word to describe her: unshakable. She didn't play by the industry's outdated rules. She rewrote them, and the world took notice. Investors, activists, journalists. Everyone wanted to understand how one woman had managed to flip an entire system on its head with nothing but truth, strategy, and purpose. Months passed, and what began as a viral moment became a national movement. Ariana continued to operate with poise and precision, still quietly running her VC firm, still mentoring young women of color in business, still showing up without fanfare. But everywhere she went, eyes watched with a new level of recognition. Conferences invited her to speak. Universities asked her to guest lecture. Corporate boards scrambled to diversify, some authentically, others out of fear. The deal she made with the new airline quickly became a blueprint for socially responsible investing. And while Ariana appreciated the visibility, she kept her focus sharp. It was never about being seen, it was about what people saw. She often said, "Respect shouldn't be earned by wealth or titles. It should be the default." That line became quoted, printed, etched onto posters and headlines. It reminded the world that dignity isn't negotiable. And behind closed doors, Ariana worked tirelessly to ensure the world she moved through would be safer, fairer, and more inclusive than the one she had walked into years before. What had happened at that gate in Atlanta had set something powerful into motion. An awakening, a shift, a reckoning. One cool autumn morning, Ariana stood outside the newly renovated terminal of a regional airport. It had been the site of another racial profiling incident months earlier, one she helped mediate behind the scenes. A new plaque hung at the entrance, engraved with her name and her words, "Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it walks in quietly, does the right thing, and changes the game." Reporters gathered. The press wanted a soundbite. Ariana smiled, gave them a nod, and simply said, "Let the work speak." She turned and walked inside. No cameras, no entourage, just grace. Back at her office later that day, a letter from the same intern, now a rising star in her firm, waited on her desk. "Thank you," it read, "for seeing me, for choosing justice, and for never letting silence be the answer." Ariana folded the letter gently, placed it in a drawer beside her tablet, and turned her attention to the next meeting. Her story, once one of humiliation, had become a legacy of resilience. And that terminal, that gate, that so-called moment of protocol, it would forever stand as proof that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones others try to overlook. But they only overlook them once.